Jeremy? Oh, sorry. They're saying they can't hear you, Jason. Hold on a second. Give me like 2 seconds, everybody. Let me figure out why Jason is not coming through. Uh, Go ahead, talk, Jason, for me.
I am talking.
There we go. Now go ahead and give that beautiful intro one more time.
Okay, here we go. Good evening, fellow counselors to Scary Stories by the Campfire. We are your hosts tonight, Jason,
And Jeremy.
and tonight we are going to be talking about one of the best Friday the 13th movies out there. That is part 6, Jason Lives. Jeremy, take it away.
I don't know where to begin with this.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. Oh, it was a good movie. I really enjoyed it, and I see why everybody else liked it. First off, sorry for the technical difficulties. Um, had to make a switch on the stuff to get it so Jason can be heard. But no, it was a fun movie. It was a lot of fun. I Probably the most fun I've had in a very long time when it comes to these movies. Yeah, it had the same basic formula still set up, but I don't know. There was just something so different about it that I liked.
It was the humor.
There was a
It
lot
had
of it.
in, it had intentional humor added to it. It wasn't like, some of the earlier movies that some of the earlier movies or like the nightmare movies where you look at it and you find humor in it even though it's not supposed to be humorous. You just kind of look at it and go, huh, that's kind of funny. But this one intentionally had humor in it, and I think that's why it worked. And I don't think there was any real characters that I disliked.
I don't think
It
so
was
either.
it was yeah, I mean this was the final movie for the Tommy Jarvis um trilogy.
All right, well, let's start there. Let's start with Tommy Jarvis.
Let's start with Tommy Jarvis.
So he was first played by Corey Feldman,
Hmm.
and then in this movie, he's played by um, Tom Matthews, and
Hmm.
in the last one, he's played by John Shepard in Part Five.
Hmm. Hmm.
So let's talk about the differences with Tommy as we've gone from one Tommy Jarvis to another Tommy Jarvis to this Tommy Jarvis.
Hmm.
Do you think um, that this Tommy Jarvis is the best out of the three Tommies?
Yes, hands down, yes. I mean, it's hard to really compare him to like the Corey Feldman because Corey Feldman in the movie was just a kid, and he had more limitations. I mean, he did have like a strong finish. When he was pretty much the one who killed Jason Voorhees.
I know, and that's pretty
And,
crazy to think about.
yeah, he was the one who killed Jason Voorhees, and the the middle Tommy Jarvis there um, had a lot going for him. He was very kind of, you know, traumatized by the incidents that happened when he was a kid, and um, So he was very kind of broody and quiet and was very hard to make friends with. And you're like, oh, this is going to build up to something because you get to see him beat up on some other people. And when Jason actually shows up, it's kind of a letdown. He just kind of like lets him get whooped,
Yeah.
and then right there at the end, he cuts his hand off and he falls out the thing. That was about his only contribution to it. This movie, for some weird reason, he wanted to make sure Jason was dead, and him and his buddy go out there, dig up the body, and then Tommy, crazy Tommy, takes the fence post, starts stabbing it with it, and lightning strikes and brings Jason back to life. And but instead of just kind of like being traumatized or whatever, he was actually trying to find a way to stop him. He was trying to warn people, and no one would listen. And eventually, he did figure out how to kind of stop him. And but yeah, it was a very strong, I think, character arc for him. So that's probably why I prefer him over the other two, because he is the one who kind of set this thing in motion, and then he planned on finishing it instead of just kind of. And when the fight scenes came around, when he was facing off with Jason, it wasn't like he was just like standing there cowering, like, oh god. He actually was like, come on, let's do this thing, and he let him out into the water and whatnot.
It's almost as if we wanted to see the end Tommy Jarvis of part of this one, except in part 5 with the other actor.
Yeah.
That would have been funny to see the big bulky Tommy Jarvis being like, "Come on, Jason, let's do this."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then let's move on to Megan.
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 Megan. Like when the
Megan.
deputy turned around, he felt betrayed. She's like, Megan. Very, very. Oh god. Yeah. All these.
Final girl Megan. If you could call her that.
Yeah, I'd call her that because she is technically the final girl. I liked her. I liked her because she was different than all the rest of them that came before.
Yes,
All the,
very much so. She was the one who was like, "I'm going with you. Come on, Tommy. I'm going with you. You're not driving my car. Only I can drive my car. Here, get down."
yeah. Yeah, because all the other ones were kind of, um, they were put in that position of being hunted down by Jason, and she was kind of the same, but instead of just running around scared, and I mean, I don't think she ran into Jason until towards like the end of the movie. It wasn't like he had been messing with her all throughout the movie. It was like right there at the end, and she didn't even really have to do anything with him. I mean,
No, she
he
didn't.
came through. He came through a door, grabbed her, and then Tommy called him, and he kind of dropped her and went out there for his final showdown. So there wasn't really any. Bleh, there was not really any interaction between the two. Um, but I did like her attitude. I mean, compared to the other ones, they were kind of more down to earth and always trying to figure out how to stop him. In this one, she was gung ho and she was just like wherever Tommy was going, she was going, and I did like that about her. She did have some sort of fiery uh, personality to her.
I agree. I thought she was a lot of fun to watch. Um, Very humorous. Very, like you said, just wanting to be that person that's in control of everything. And that leads me to um, the Jason character as a whole in this one. We get C.J. Graham playing Jason in this one. Um, but what's funny is he actually. There were two Jasons in this movie. Actually, two actors that played Jason. crew member Dan Bradley actually played him first. And that's why during the paintball scenes, Jason looks different. He's bulkier because those were the first scenes they shot. And that's why his eye color changes. But Paramount saw the first day and asked that he be recast, feeling that Bradley would look too bulky for the role. Which we're about to get into Kane Hodder, who is.
Yeah, Kane Hodder's like the epitome Jason. He's like, when you think of a Friday movie, 9 times out of 10, you're probably thinking of like Kane Hodder as Jason. Because he's the one who played him the most too. He played him in like what, parts 7, 8, and 9? And
Mm,
parts of 10, I think. Jason X, I think. And I think he was in Freddy versus Jason.
yeah,
I'm,
it
I'm pretty sure. I think he pretty much well rounded out that character. And this Jason was actually I like this Jason.
I did
I
too.
like to
I did too.
I like to see like the different. That's the fun thing with these movies is that when you're watching them, you know it's Jason. You know it's Jason, and you know that technically it's the same character from parts 2 through X. But when you get a different actor in almost every movie playing him, and they play him all a little bit differently, it's fun to look at like the mannerisms. Like, you had um, burlap sack Jason from part 2, who was much more kind of mountain man, kind of running and kind of stalkerish, very kind of late 70s horror type. Then
The
you had the ones in like 3D where
part,
he just
oh,
kind of,
him nonchalantly walks
yeah,
around and kills people.
yeah, he had like no rush to him except kind of towards the end where he was actually chasing Final Girl. And of course, part 4. But this Jason here, he was almost like the definitive what you would think of Jason, where you notice when he was like turning, he always turned like the whole upper body. Whenever he did like a turn, it wasn't just like a head turn; it was like the whole body was moving. And like when he went, he was killing the that cemetery guy, gravekeeper guy, and he was hacking him or whatever, and that guy comes around and standing off to the side watching him, and Jason just stops in mid swing and just kind of turns the whole body and looks. That is different little traits that he had, and this one was definitely probably how. Um, I know Kane Hodder puts a little bit more intensity into it. Like when we get into those movies, he's like just like he's always breathing real strong. He's always moving the shoulders. But this is probably one of the better Jasons so far.
Oh, this is. We nicknamed this Jason Tim the Tool Man Jason.
Yep.
He walks around.
Yep.
He's got like a workman's belt satchel that he kept like
Did
little throwing
they
knives in that he hit that cop
did
with.
they did they bury him in that, or did he just like come back from the grave and decide to put that stuff on?
They
So
didn't bury him in it because they buried him in the stuff from part 4.
yeah, so he had to have changed clothes or done something differently. That's now that you mention it, that is kind of weird.
He's like,
Um.
I rose from the grave. I want some new clothes. Yeah, these aren't gonna work. Ah, but this one will.
Oh, and Ravenfire said, "I loved his character and personality. It's personal, and I loved how he interacted, especially with the kids." There you go. Did you ever notice that, Jeremy?
Yeah, every time he was in the room with the kids, he just kind of stared at them and avoided them,
Yeah, yeah.
except for
He
that
didn't.
one time.
Yeah, he didn't really interact with the kids at all, and I don't know if that was an intentional thing. The way it plays off, at least to me, is that he wasn't gonna harm the kids. It wasn't like he was gonna go in there and just like slaughter a bunch of kids. Because even that one girl who was like real scared of him, and he kind of leaned in and was like looking at her. If he wanted to kill her, he would have just did it. But I do think that in some form or fashion, Jason is not a child killer. I think he just seeks revenge on like all the counselors for the death of his mother, not the kids. They're innocent bystanders, like like he was when he was drowning or whatnot. So it was kind of fun to see him, and I don't think we get that anymore. We don't get any sort of like interactions with kids. Like Michael over there, it's just like, oh, what? You're only like 15? I'll crush your head in with the cardboard or something.
Well,
Was that?
let's talk about the kills then. You know,
Oh my God, there's
which
so many of them.
which was your favorite?
Which was my favorite? Oh, that's gonna be hard to say because this movie didn't have a whole lot of violence to it. I mean, let me explain that. This movie was chock full of violence, but it was like violence you don't really get to see. Like everything was almost done off screen. Um, Probably. Oh man, there's so many of them now that I'm thinking about it. Probably the head turn on. What's her name? Sissy. He just like yanks her out the window and just turns her head completely around, and it pops off, and he's just like, "Oh, too much."
So that's my third favorite. Second being
That's
the punch through the heart.
yeah. At the beginning, that's about the most gore that we got out of the entire movie. I think is that heart punch.
But my number one favorite kill was David Kagan as Sheriff Garris, where he just like folded
I
him
completely
back like a pretzel.
Oh my God, I completely forgot about that. That sheriff was extreme. That was like one of the most extreme sheriffs ever. He had no problem just almost downright shooting Tommy a couple times.
You better shut up or you're gonna wish you had.
Yeah, he was but I mean it he wasn't it was so great about his character is that he wasn't mean just for the sake of being mean. The town at this point,
The town
yes,
was
he
doing
had.
what it could to forget about it, and he wanted to make sure it stayed like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't blame him for. And then you got Tommy Jarvis, who's a survivor of one of the massacres or whatever, showing up. He's like, "Jason's alive. Jason's back. Jason," and they're like, "No, we buried Jason. We don't want no more. You shouldn't be remembered." We even changed. It went from Crystal Lake to was it Forest Green or something like that? Was the name of the
Yeah, and watching Jason walk in there underneath that sign and just kind of stare at it, going,
That was actually a pretty good touch. I did like that where he kind of walked up and he looked at the sign like he didn't recognize it. Like,
"This
what did they do to my
this
what did they
doesn't
do to
feel
my
like
house?
Crystal Lake anymore, Toto."
Yeah. So I do really think, touches like that is really good. I think like I said, none of the characters were like really bad characters. There's not like one character I didn't like. Um I think
Oh, that's interesting.
that and the soundtrack. They had like what, three Alice Cooper songs on this.
Yes, it's full of Alice Cooper. Apparently, John Shepard was actually offered the role to play Tommy again. But apparently he was a born again Christian and he turned it down.
Yeah, that I think I heard something about them offering him the role. I didn't know why he didn't get it or turned it down or whatnot, but yeah, it makes sense. They
And you were right. You were right about Jason not harming children. Writer and director Tom McLaughlin decided that Jason would not harm a child out of sympathy for the plight of children generated by his childhood drowning.
Okay, so it was an intentional thing. It wasn't something that you can just kind of read into it. It was an intentional choice that they did make for him not to harm the children, which actually kind of makes his character, at least for me, a little bit better. I mean, doesn't make him any scarier or any more scary because now that you know if you're under the certain age of like 14, he won't hurt you or anything. But
You would not
um,
believe what I just read.
oh, what did you just read, Jeremy?
So what was the
Go ahead, share with us.
what was the problem with Part 5 when it
Problem with
no, before it was released? Like, remember what we talked about? It had to go to the MPAA like 6
yeah,
times, so it could.
yeah, because it kept getting butchered.
Yep. This film, producers feared that the film would get a PG-13 rating, so they upped the violence to push it to an R rating.
Well, I mean, if this was a PG-13 movie, I wouldn't let my kids watch it. But I mean, it did like I said, it had more violence in it, but the actual acts of violence weren't as graphic as some of the earlier movies. I mean, like the heart punch and the head twist is probably about the earliest that are the most graphic stuff you're gonna get. Everything else is almost done off screen.
I mean, you
You know, when
had
he
you had that. You had the throwing knife to the forehead.
yeah, that really didn't amount to much.
You had the stab in the gut for the other deputy. The
Did he
back
get stabbed
break.
again? I thought he had his head crushed. I thought Jason like grabbed his hand, just kind of crushed his head.
You had the
Um,
backbreaker.
yeah, which still wasn't that graphic. I mean, it was painful to kind of watch because it happened so fast, but it was still bloodless.
And then yeah, there wasn't much blood in this one. Then you had all the paintballers that died, which was just a
Yeah,
hilarious scene to watch in general.
it just kind of came out of nowhere. Like there was just people in this movie just to die. That was it. They were just there to die. I mean, even the counselor, what was his name? Court, whatever the one single counselor dude. He had that girl at the RV. They had that RV a rocket,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jason snuck inside, and he slammed her face into the side of the trailer and pushed it in, so it could just like make an imprint of her face sticking out the side of the camper. Um,
And that dude is just rocking his way across up there in the driver's seat of that RV, not giving a care in the world about
yeah,
any of
she's
it.
she's she's back there screaming. Oh my God! He put that thing in drive. He hit the gas, and she flew back down the hallway, and she stood, or she got low up. Then he put it in reverse, and she flew forward. This is stuff that makes the movie so great. It's because it just adds that touch of humor. You would think a movie like this doesn't really need that, but I'm actually really glad that they did do it because they were kind of probably going, you know what this movie could use?
just,
Something new.
just a little bit of
We can't,
humor.
you know. And I think it has just the right amount of humor to it.
Well,
And
this
was
movie,
that?
I was gonna say this movie has my second favorite line of any Friday the 13th movie. My first one still being from
Um,
5, them damn enchiladas.
wait. Let me guess this one, Jim. Let me guess this one. Is it when the sheriff's deputy pulls out his gun? He's got the little red laser sight, and it's pointed at Tommy's forehead. He goes, "Wherever the red light goes, you bang." Is that it, Jeremy? Is that the line? That guy was over the top. Oh my God.
That deputy is played by
Uh,
okay, he's played by Vincent Guastafaro. You know what his last name was, by the way?
what
His
was his
last
last
name
name?
is just as over the top as he was. His name was Deputy Rick Cologne.
Rick
Cologne.
Cologne. Cologne. Hey, they actually had a speaking of that guy, and speaking of Tommy Jarvis, they had an unofficial. Oh, I can't remember who did it. We might have to take a look at it as a double part. It's a YouTube video. I think it's two videos. One of them is like "Don't go into the woods alone,"
Yes,
something
I've
like
seen
that.
it.
Yeah, and then the second one was like with the snow. Don't
Yeah,
go into the where. But both the Tommy Jarvis actor and the Rick Cologne actor reprised their roles in the second one,
I
and
remember
they're
hearing
older,
about
yes,
that.
but they're the same actors and they're playing the same characters. It's kind of like a little side continuity thing to this, and they're it is. I think I saw on something, but yeah, we may have to take a peek at that. I mean, I know it's like unofficial Friday the 13th stuff because but
So Reggie and Pam were apparently supposed to make a comeback for this movie, but Shavar Ross found out that Reggie was supposed to be killed off, so he said no.
yeah, I think they were gonna kill them both off. I think they were gonna bring them both back just to kill them off. At least that was the original scripting. I don't know how much of that actually transpired into this movie, or if they just changed the whole thing. But I do remember seeing something where they said that they had offered them the roles, but they would just be killed off. So I was like, well,
Crazy.
yeah, it's kind of the idea of if I was in one of these movies and I survived the movie and then they just said, hey, you want to come back? And I go, yeah, sure. What am I gonna do? They just go, oh, you're gonna be in like 2 minutes and you're gonna die. I mean, does my character get to die cool or something? I mean, is there some point to it, or is it just kind of like the Alice one, like at the beginning of part two, where you get to witness her inside her house or apartment or whatever for a little bit, and then Jason comes in, stabs her in the head, and that's the end of the movie, or not the end of the movie, but that's the end of her role. I mean, it
Well,
just makes.
there was one thing that came from part 5 into this movie.
Oh, and what was that?
The pickup truck. The blue one that Tommy drives.
Was that the one that the school or the Wayward Home was using? That they were using? I did not notice that.
You
I
know, the
didn't notice
one
that.
that the sheriff managed to magically get from one spot all the way out to the county road
I
where they
drove him
dropped him
off.
off.
Oh, almost like right in the middle of the interstate. It was like almost the middle of like an exit, like emerging back onto the interstate where they had that green patch right there in the triangle form. Yeah. Um,
Here's your
that's
car. Have fun.
yeah. I think he had the deputy go, but deputy had to drive it.
Yeah, because
But
where the red laser goes,
you bang.
bang.
God,
That's gonna be.
that line.
That's oh my god. Kind of like um. I think we're dead meat.
Yeah, those two kids, nothing bad could happen, and they were just not phased by anything.
Oh man. So,
But
what about you? What was your favorite part of the whole movie?
oh, besides the entire movie, I don't think I had a problem with this movie at all. Um, I think
That
I think my favorite part.
before you keep going. That's right, Ravenfire. When you say what, you bang.
Oh, got that line. I
Still no
think
damn enchiladas, but
I think the entirety of this movie was just a really good watch. I mean, there's some parts in other movies where it was really good, and then you just kind of go, where you have to kind of, I guess, make your own humor. This one provided it for you. I mean, everybody was. I I think it does suffer in the fact that you don't get to really know the characters too much.
I would have liked to know them a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean they fall into the same tropes as the other movies where they kind of just show up and they don't have much. You don't know who they are, where they came from, why they're there. But the the good thing about them is that none of them were actually terrible characters.
They were
Like,
just really bad counselors, especially that one dude who was like showing the boys. He's like, "This is a pile of rocks. Now the Native Americans use this to mark their path. So when Dad went hunting and the son wanted to follow, but didn't want Mom to know where he was going, so he
yeah, it
knocked
was
it over."
yeah, because it was yeah, because he said something about like this because the Native Americans, like this if the chief here didn't have a didn't he wanted to like divorce his wife or something like that. He had another woman he was with, and he put the rocks up. Yes. Oh my God. Even the kids were just like, yeah.
Oh man. Yes, him getting shot with a shotgun was hilarious because he'd be like,
Oh,
bang, and he's just like,
yeah, he'd sit back up and then just take another shot, and he'd do a rollover and sit back up.
oh
Um,
man. All you had to do was play some music, Jason, and it would be Weekend at Jason's.
Pretty much, yeah. The first part of what Ravenfire said is I don't think I liked how they killed him because after it shredded him, it showed him and it didn't, and I didn't see any damage. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the way that I see it is that he really doesn't have any meaty bits to him anymore because he had been rotting in the ground for a while. He's just kind of like this. I almost want to say like almost old leathery because he's
Zombified.
all yeah because he's pretty much zombified. And they kill him in this movie. Well, technically, they kill him in this movie by Tommy ties a chain around his neck and drops him in the lake with a big giant boulder that sinks him to the bottom. And then when they were down there struggling, and Megan came back down, she was able to get the boat and pretty much use the propeller to cut into Jason's face, or at least into like his neck. And you see just kind of like the edges of the blades hitting his neck until you hear that final, and you see like the chunky bits and stuff coming out. But then when they show him again, it's not really too damaged, and his eyes open up. And I know it's probably a canon thing now where uh, he just has like this crazy healing factor because that's it just kind of explains how he keeps coming back so often. So, um, but I think of him as being this kind of old mummified corpse or whatever, and he doesn't really have any blood pumping through him. So if he gets something lacerated, it's not going to be pumping blood out. It's just going to be some meaty chunks.
That makes
What's with that
sense.
face, Jeremy? Oh, you just
I just had to think of something. Just
oh,
thought of something.
what did you think of, Jeremy?
How stupid Megan was for swimming out there to try to get Tommy, knowing that Jason was right underneath him. Because she went swimming for him, and he went, "Oh look, there's another lake, yeah!" And he's just sitting there like,
Yeah, he's like holding on to him, like,
"I'm
hey,
pulling on a
plenty,
bell,
there's
yay!"
plenty of people. There's plenty of room down here to for everyone to hang out. She probably swam out there to go save Tommy, but you
Which
might think that Jason might have already drowned. So
it was just funny because he's just sitting there like this while she's struggling. He's just like trying to drag
okay,
her under.
okay. And Jeremy, I told everyone that we were watching the movie with. I all told them. I said, remember something. What did I tell you to remember, Jeremy?
Remember the water for Freddy versus
Remember,
Jason.
remember the water. How he walked because Tommy was out on a little boat and he's calling him names like, come on, come on, come on. And then Jason walked into the water and pretty much sank up underneath the water to get him. People to remember this because it gets stupid. It gets stupid.
Yeah, that was so
Oh God,
funny.
it's stupid. It gets
It
stupid.
it was, um, and it's just coincidental that Alice Cooper wrote most of the soundtrack. This is the sixth movie in the series, and he just coincidentally had a cameo in the sixth Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
No, was the sixth one?
Uh huh.
I want to say that he wrote most. Well, I mean, I think I think two of the songs were already on his albums. I
He
mean,
still wrote them.
oh yeah, he wrote them, but
Still
he
wrote
didn't
them.
write them specifically for this movie.
Nope. But this is the only one of the only Friday the 13th movies to not hit number one on opening weekend.
Yep, and that is probably due to what Part Five became, which is really hard to believe because people will eat up a Fast and Furious movie. They will outsell that thing, and those movies keep getting worse and worse and worse. And yet people keep going and keep making that number one, and I don't understand why. But this movie was like, oh, that last one was a bad one. I don't think I'm gonna go see it. Oh,
Yeah, one bad movie usually sends it to the scrap pile. But it's like you
oh,
said. It's like you said. Fast and the Furious comes out, and they're like, "Oh, let's go another one!
they're real. They just I don't know. Some movie franchises they just won't. They're zombified Jason. They just won't die. They just keep coming back.
Yay!" Just wait till we get to the Halloween series.
That one's done in three timelines, not including the
Whoa.
Rob Zombie ones.
There we go.
And I say Rob Zombie's kind of its own thing, but they all branch out from the
Actually,
original one or two.
you you want to talk about a confusing timeline? Just wait till we get to Saw.
I want to, in a way, I want to do Saw, and part of it, I'm like, oh my god, it's too much drama.
So,
Remember when we all thought the Saw movies were just about how gruesome the traps were? When in reality, you just want to watch it because you want to know what soap opera is going on at the time. Remember that? Remember in that one movie? Remember that in that one movie where she opened up the box, but you don't get to see what's in the box? Now we're gonna explain what's in the box three movies later, and that's where that plot's gonna go. Um,
they're always
which
thinking
thank
2 movies in advance.
oh thank God they didn't do that with this one.
I-
This one
Imagine
by
Friday the 13th if they tried that same thing. Or any of these older movies. Imagine Nightmare on Elm Street if they tried that. These
I
convoluted storylines that just absolutely don't get explained in the movie until 2 movies later. Then you're like, oh, that's what it meant.
Mimi says watch for the gore.
No, man, that's all soap opera. Cause my
Yeah,
name's Gordon. I'm a doctor.
I do want to say that um I've never actually sat down and watched like any of the Saw movies, like in their entireties. But and that's probably due to the reason because when I was younger, when the movies were kind of in their big hype zone, um, I was not one for torture movies or gore movies or anything like that. I didn't like anything that was like super bloody, super violent, anything like that. Probably because my imagination would run like people are like, oh my god, there's this one trap and just like does this thing, and I'm like, oh my god, that sounds horrible. Then I actually started getting back into the horror stuff through the Kill Count on Dead Meat channel on YouTube, and I actually went through the Saw stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's pretty gory, but this is just fascinating to watch because there's an actual story involved and not just, it's a convoluted story, but there
Strung
is a
out
story.
across a lot of movies.
Yeah, but there is a story there, and um, I think I think between the kill count and um, Dead by Daylight, Dead by Daylight has actually sparked a lot of interest back into the horror franchises for me because when they pop up a new character, I'm like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
actually, I'm almost tempted to go watch that movie. Let's see, you know,
So I think it's time, Jason. We get to my favorite part of this night. Yes.
one of them dresses up like Jason, and well, I mean, it's not gonna.
No. Although I do wish I had my hockey mask right now. No, it's time for the tomato meter.
The tomato meter.
All right.
Oh god, this is gonna be bad. People are gonna be like, trash this movie. I bet.
Mimi said, I kid. The story was very good. The gore just made me happy.
Yeah, you could say the story was. I mean, I'm not gonna say the story's bad. I mean, each individual. I guess if you broke it down individually, you might have some good stories and some bad stories. But I think overall, it's just so complicated, and so they do a lot of flashbacks. So they
Oh,
just like
dude.
flashback, all these flashbacks and stuff. It kind of makes everything confusing. But I think that's the joy of it. It's just
Jigsaw
the
was the worst, where you're doing like a past storyline and the present
yeah.
storyline happen all
Well,
in, and they're showing
I
it
like
kind of at the same time, but it's really two different times happening at once.
yeah, I like that idea. It's just like, guess what? We're gonna play this entire movie, and we're gonna do it this way. And you're like, oh, they did that with what was it, Saw 2,
Yes.
where where most of it was done in the house. It was like in the past or whatever.
Yeah, all the
And
camera feeds were from like, it was from like 2 days prior, and the kid is in the safe, and Jigsaw tells old hothead Donnie Wahlberg, he's like, all you gotta do is listen and talk to me, and when the timer goes out, and your son will be safe. And like they do their whole thing, and they find out that all the recordings they're watching are literally just recordings from the house from like 3 days ago, and the kid is literally in the safe in the same room as them. And when the timer goes out, the safe opens, and he's literally sitting in there.
yeah, it was that's one of those movies. But we running off on a tangent on a Saw tangent. Don't know how I saw. Don't know how I saw that one coming.
Oh, the
Well,
puns. All
that
right.
was bad. I'm
So,
sorry.
the tomato meter,
Uh,
50% on part 6.
50, and that was critics.
No, that's the tomato meter. Yeah, that's critics.
That's critics. I mean, if I was a critic, my probably my complaints would be like, the lack of character development for a lot of characters. Um, but then I'm a critic of a horror movie, so I'm really going to be just stupid about it. So I don't agree with that. I think it should be higher.
So, one critic said it's the latest chapter of the most offensive series in film history. Unless Burt
Wow.
Reynolds makes 3 more Smokey and the Bandit pictures real quick.
Wow. Wow, that is
That's kind of harsh.
why are you throwing wait, so you saying Smokey and the Bandit was bad? Is that what that critic was saying?
Probably. Um,
Or was he just saying that the more they made those movies, the worse they were gonna get?
mm,
I don't
uh,
mean to bring
clever meta slasher still features too many red shirt characters, which takes away screen time from its far more interesting counselors. Megan is a solid final girl that the film undercuts in its last act. At least Tommy and Jason are good.
Yep, I will agree with that. I didn't actually realize that, but with the more characters you put in this, the less time you take away from. You know how much more action we could have had with probably between Jason and Tommy if we didn't have to deal. with Jason's rampage through the camp, killing off all the quote unquote extra characters. That's the problem with these extra characters is if you're not going to develop them, there's really no point in having them
Yep.
except to be meat shields, and I actually agree with that. I do agree with that to an extent.
Upscaled in special effects, but still suffering from the same bland character and story treatment. And then the final one, although the first four sequels had their own brand of tongue in cheek horror, Part 6 marked the first step into overt campiness of the series.
Over campiness. No, I think compared to the other ones, if you enjoyed the other ones, this one would have been way too campy. But I actually do like this one because it's like kind of reminds me of like an Evil Dead 2,
Yeah.
where the first Evil Dead is, and we will get to those movies. Um, but like the first Evil Dead is very, it's a serious movie, but it's so amateur that it does have like some funny, goofy feels to it. But then they took a step into the goofiness with Evil Dead 2.
Yep.
And I think for Army of Darkness they went too far. It kind of reminds me of actually the Thor movies.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, because you have like Thor 1 and Thor 2, and they were pretty much they were solid. I wouldn't say they're good movies, but they were more serious movies. I think this was back in the time when Marvel and Disney were trying to make like all their movies kind of individual, have their own feel. And then they just realized, hey, we should just do everything funny. And they did Thor Ragnarok, and I think, in my personal opinion, is the best Thor movie out of them all. They were able to very effectively, like Evil Dead 2, mix the humor with the seriousness and the storytelling. And then I think, like Army of Darkness and Thor: Love and Thunder, they just went a little too far with the.
Okay,
Uh,
Jason. It's okay to admit why you love Ragnarok so much. It's okay to admit why. We all know it's Jeff Goldblum. It's okay to admit.
Actually, there is a wow, this tangent's going crazy. There's actually on Disney Plus. Jeff Goldblum's got that show,
Yep.
right? The World According to Jeff Goldblum. I highly recommend it for people who like Jeff Goldblum.
Love
Anything,
Jeff Goldblum.
which uh, which we will be getting to in The Fly. So yay on that one.
And Jurassic
Um,
Park. And
and
uh. Checkmate.
there, no Independence Day though. Sorry guys, I'm not doing that. But I think it was the final episode of the first season. They actually have one. It's titled Monsters, and he talks about like what monsters have become in like pop culture and stuff like that. And I ended up watching that episode a while back, and I highly recommend anyone check it out because it's pretty interesting. That show is just really interesting all around. I've learned quite a bit. Um, so,
So,
ew, no fly. Um, yes, fly. I do want to say because man, we are just not running on the Friday train right now. One of my personal favorite horror movies is The Fly. I do love that movie. It's by far one of my favorites. The Jeff Goldblum one, not the original one. I mean, the original's interesting too, but get back on the Friday train. Friday.
audience score 53% on Rotten Tomatoes.
At least the audience knew what they were watching. Definitely still think that's low. I think overall this movie should have gotten like
At least a 70 on both.
Ra-
Minimum.
Ra- yeah, Raven says 80. Um, yeah, I'm gonna agree with her. I'm gonna say it's about an 80 at least for me. I mean, it does have some problems, but oh my god, this movie is just it's amazing for
So
what it is. It's
that means, on a scale of 1 to 10, Jason,
oh oh oh, this is gonna be a 9.
9.
This one's a 9.
I
Me
I
me likey this movie.
I give it a 9 too. I'm not even gonna lie.
This is this is me likey this movie. This
But buckle
uh
up,
th-
boys and girls, because whew,
yeah,
we
we
going
got us.
downhill now.
Yeah, I think the movies start to slowly start to progress or progress. They slowly start to decline at this point. I think
Which
we've hit the peak.
it really
And I
sucks because I just thought of something.
oh, what do you think?
We start the decline, but we get the
Hmm.
best Jason in the
And see
worst
that
movies.
that's the thing is that
Oh no.
it's not. I think for the most part, I think it's the stories that are the bad things. I don't think we could watch like the next movie. What is it? The New Blood or whatever? New
Yes.
Breed,
New blood.
something. And I don't remember this movie at all.
I remember Bernie's in it. Old Terry Kaiser.
Yeah, I do remember that he's in it, but the thing is that whenever I'm like talking about these movies to people and I'm naming them off, this is the one movie I can never remember. I can't remember this movie.
Is it like
So
it's like the probably the dream child of the night of the Friday series? Like you know it, you just don't remember it.
yeah,
Or
well,
no,
it could be worse. It could be the Freddy's Dead.
yeah, no, we haven't got there yet.
Jeremy, I don't think we're gonna get that low.
Ooh, Jason goes to hell.
Maybe.
It doesn't get as campy, but it's just as dumb.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm not saying that these later movies are dumb, but um, you had said we're getting into the worst of the movies, but we get the best Jason, which I think might make these movies a little bit better. Because here's the thing. Everyone remembers Campy Freddy. When we were doing our nightmare movies, that's when you talk about Freddy Krueger, you think of Campy Freddy.
True
So
that.
when we saw serious scary Freddy, it was kind of out of place. It's like, wow, this I don't know whether to like this or not. And then you get to the campy Freddy, and you're like, hey, this is. And then you get to super campy Freddy, and you're like, wow, this is just way bad. I
Alright.
think. I think since Jason's played by multiple actors and they all put their own little spin on him, there Kane Hodder plays him the most, so most people are going to be, that's what they're going to remember. But I think it's mostly just the story, not the actual like actors or acting in it.
Okay, well that leads into my next thing. Real quick before we close this out, just something I kind of thought. So each with Jason being played by a different person each time, really couldn't do it in the Nightmare series because it's the same person. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Jason, sack wearing Jason. You don't have to give a
Uh,
Y, just a number.
uh, Sequer and Jason is probably
I'm gonna give him a 5 for me.
a 5.
Yep.
Um, I'm gonna give him a. I'm gonna give him a 6.
6.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm gonna give him a.
part 3. I'm gonna give him a 7 because I love the nonchalance, especially with the
I'm
spear gun, where he's just like, you know what, bam, I'm done.
I'm gonna give that one a 5.
All
I'm
right.
gonna give that one a. I'm gonna give that one a 5 because I think it might be because of the nonchalant. I mean, some of those scenes were kind of funny like that, but it was just kind of like put a little effort maybe. Feel a little excited for something. You just shot some girl in the face with a harpoon gun. Feel excited.
All right, part 4.
Part 4.
I'm gonna give that one
Um,
a 7 as well.
I'm gonna give that one a 7. He had a little bit more. I think the way he was hanging up bodies and stuff,
Yep.
that was actually kind of cool.
Roy Burns.
Roy Burns.
I'm gonna give him an 8 for creativity on kills.
I'm gonna give him a 7 because besides that creativity, there was no actual change in mannerisms. He was
Actually,
just
seven
kind
and
of.
a half. I'll give him a
Oh,
slightly better one because of his creativity. And Jason Lives.
this one gets like an 8.
I give it an 8 as well. Tim
An
the
8.
Tool Man Jason.
Yeah, Kane Hodder's gonna be coming up, and we're gonna be like, that's it. I don't know whether we should count like. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see how much his mannerism, if any, his mannerism ever changes. So,
Well, everybody, that's all the time we have. Jason, you have anything else for him?
go out, watch this movie, buy it now. This is it's just a fun movie. So
It
you
is.
know.
So don't forget Movie Night Mondays on every Monday, 8:30 Central Time. Next week we are watching Friday the 13th, Part 7, New Blood, with Terry Kaiser. It's basically Jason versus telepathy and telekinesis.
Jason versus Carrie.
Yeah.
It's the team up we are the matchup we always wanted.
So y'all stick around for the trailer for that. Besides that, y'all stay safe. We'll see y'all next week. Same time, same campfire.
Buy this movie and be safe
Bye,
out there.
movie.
Later.
This is the one you've been waiting for.
What's happening to me?
Your psychokineses and these delusions.
You're not listening to me!
The one you've been asking for.
Hey, Tina, isn't this the way they wear their jackets back in the mental hospital?
Concentrate. Concentrate, Tina!
The one you've been dying for.
You people give me the creeps.
Okay, you big hunk of a man, come and get me.
Jason is back. But this time, someone is waiting.
Jason?
Tina, don't go in there!
Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood.
There goes the neighborhood.